What is going on, guys? Stefan here with you, S&E's Garage, and in today's video we're going to be starting the repair procedure on our 2014 Kawasaki STX-15F. Now, we had a very scary situation with this jet ski. Basically, what happened is there is a seal on the back of the jet ski where the drive shaft comes out for the impeller, for the jet pump. That seal failed and allowed the hull of the jet ski to fill up with water while I was riding it out in the Barnegat Bay here in New Jersey, and the ski almost sank. I ended up having to beach it. I made it back to my ramp, but when I went to come off plane, the ski went to go down, so I got back on the throttle, I beached it, and then we had to, drain it on the beach and get it back up onto the trailer. So long story short, we're going to be pulling the engine in this video to go ahead and replace the seal and possibly the drive shaft. Once we get it apart, we'll kind of see what we need to do. So when I was out on the ski the day that this happened, I started noticing that the ski was kind of tipsy, like it wanted to tip over when I was taking turns. So I went to a spot out in the bay where I know its water's about knee high, and I shut the ski off, I hopped off it, and I opened up my seat. I took my seat off, and I noticed that there was water up to the top of my power takeoff. And at that point, I said, uh-oh, I got to get this thing back. So I hopped on it, kept it on plane, and luckily I made it. It was probably, 3 or 4 miles to my ramp. And by the time I got to the ramp, the water was ridiculously high in here. So I'm lucky that I made it. So what I did after I got home is, obviously, I drained the jet ski. I drained it out at the ramp. And then when I got home, I put the drains back here on the back of the hull, and I stuck a hose inside of the ski, and I started to fill it up with water. And I did that for 2 reasons. Number one, I wanted to flush all the salt out of there, and number two, I wanted to see if there was anything leaking. So when I did that, I found water leaking out from the back of the jet pump, and the only place that that's going to leak from is this unit here. So this seal is our problem. Now, the problem with that being our problem is we have to remove the engine, basically, to get to that. There is a way to do it where you don't have to pull the engine all the way out. You just raise it a little bit, but at that point, I already have everything disconnected. I'm just going to pull the engine out. It's not the first time I pulled the engine out of one of these skis, and that's the way we're going to do it. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to start unbolting some stuff. We're going to unbolt this, get some of this stuff out of the way. That way I can get this air box out. And then we're just going to work on the wire harness. I am going to attempt to leave the exhaust manifold in the ski. So we're just going to unbolt it and then kind of shift it over to the side. If that doesn't work, I do have the parts on order to go ahead and replace the exhaust manifold gasket and the coupler down here. So I will have everything I need to do the repair, but that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to leave the exhaust manifold in the ski and just raise the motor up and out. The intake manifold is going to have to come off, so I'll unbolt that. Again, I'll have all those parts on the way. So let's, like I said, get right into it. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to remove these 2 Phillips heads. There's going to be Phillips here, and then there's 10 millimeters here. This is the air oil separator. We're just going to go ahead, lift it up, and get it out of the way so I can remove the air box. Alright guys, so we kind of got a little ahead of ourselves here. I do have a great video on pulling the engine of one of these from start to finish, so I'm going to link that down below. But what we did is we went ahead, we moved this guy out of the way, we pulled our air box off. It's sitting over there next to the seat. We went ahead and pulled our intake manifold. That is also sitting over there. I decided to leave the fuel rail on it so that I did not have to disturb any of the fuel injector seals. And we went ahead and disconnected a couple water lines. We disconnected the one up here on the top of the PTO, down on the bottom of the PTO, and we got the whole wire harness off of the engine along with the ignition wires. So now I have a water line here that goes into the cylinder head. That's this guy I have to take off. That goes back under the water box. And then I have the connections to the starter, And beyond that, we have the water lines here that are going to be on the oil cooler, and then I can go ahead and I believe I'll be ready to attempt to pull this engine. Now, I don't know if I have to remove the jet pump. I'm pretty sure I might have to get this to slide back and disengage from the engine, but we'll get to that point when we get there. I'm going to try to pull the engine without doing that, and I do also have to just disconnect and unbolt this exhaust. Like I said, I'm going to try to do this with leaving the exhaust in the ski, so just unbolt it and rotate it back a little bit, but we'll see what happens. But we're making some headway, and hopefully we'll be out on the water by the end of the week. All right, guys, so we got our engine out. Here it is sitting over here. We just used our lift to lift it up and then rolled the jet ski out from underneath it. I just lowered it onto this roll cart. Now, what you need to look at here is your drive shaft. Once you get the engine out, you're gonna pull the drive shaft through the hull towards the fuel tank and out. And what you wanna check is this surface here, because this is where your new seal is going to mate. Now, I'm gonna put some pictures in here. I have a before and after picture. And what you're gonna see is there was a lot of seal material on this shaft. So I just used a little bit of emery cloth, which is this stuff here, Scotch-Brite, and some rust penetrant as a lubricant, and I just worked it back and forth very lightly. You don't wanna mar this up. You just wanna do just enough to clean off the surface, and that's what we came up with. So I'm going to run this drive shaft. I have no problem. I don't really think I'm gonna have an issue with it. So now we're just waiting on parts, and this is the seal here we're going to be replacing. We're going to be replacing this whole unit. So stay tuned. It's going to be 2 seconds for you, probably be about a couple days for me. And once we get the parts in, we'll get right back into it. All right, guys, so we came in and we removed the seal here from the inside of the ski. It's held in with 4 bolts. You'll see those bolts here. And I just wanted to share with you the cause of failure on mine. The seal and the bearing that is actually in this carrier are absolutely fine. Where my problem is here in the case itself. You'll see that the rubber here separated, and when you push on this, the whole thing moves. If I do it this way, you can really see it. So what was happening is the water was getting in from around this, where the rubber here is actually broken, and just seeping right through probably the bolt holes. And this failure has probably been something that has been brewing for quite a while. It's just it finally decided to let go in a spectacular manner and almost caused me to lose the ski. So again, I got a new one of them coming. I got all new parts for it coming, and then we're gonna clean that surface up there where this thing is going to seal to, and glue everything back together. All right, guys, so as far as the jet ski is concerned, we did get some parts here to go ahead and get this job done. I wanna thank the guys over at Kawi Performance. They hooked me up. They always help me out with this thing and other jet skis when we have them, and they're great. So if you need anything for a Kawasaki jet ski, give them a call. They're located in New York. I'm gonna leave their information in the description down below. Again, they're awesome. So they went ahead and sent us this pre-assembled seal here. So it's pre-assembled, all lubed up, all greased, and ready to drop in. They went ahead and sent us the lubricant or the sealant that they want us to use to go ahead and seal this thing up. We have an intake manifold or an exhaust manifold gasket, and we're currently waiting on the intake gasket to get in. So what we can do now is we're gonna pick one of the 3 of these. This one is the one that was out of the ski. It's all corroded and pitted, so I'm not gonna use that. We're just gonna put that aside. But we're gonna pick one of these to use. I'm leaning towards this one just because of how clean this area is here. We're gonna clean this up a little bit better, get all the rest of this old sealant off it, and I'm going to go ahead and insert it here into the ski and tighten up that hose clamp, this outermost one here. And then we're going to take our bolts for the seal, and we're going to throw some of the sealant on the back of this guy here, and then glue it on. So that's what we're gonna do today, and then We might clean up the mating surfaces here for the intake and exhaust manifolds, and I could probably, for all intents and purposes, drop this engine back into the ski. I just won't have an intake manifold gasket to put it back together just yet. So let's go ahead, let's make some headway on this thing, at least get the seal and the drive shaft back in, and take it from there. Okay guys, so this is our finished product here. We cleaned this off real nice with some emery cloth. It looks literally brand new. I paid 20 bucks for this on eBay, so I'm not gonna complain. And then we went ahead and just put some white lithium grease here on the back of this where it slides into this plastic boot here. So I'm just going to go ahead and slide this in. So what we decided to do is just take this whole rubber thing out. I'm gonna go ahead and slide it together out on my bench like this, and then we'll put it into the ski. I just think it's gonna be easier to do this way. I was not mistaken. That is 100% easier. Definitely do yours this way. Just pull the whole thing out. So now the only thing we need to remember to do here is slide our hose clamps back over this. Now we can go ahead and slide this back over the plastic. Just be sure to move these hose clamps back like so. All right, so now I can get these bolt holes lined up, which looks like they pretty much are. These weird flared ends here and here are going to face up. So I'm just going to take some brake cleaner now, because I did get some oil on my hands, and I'm just going to wipe this surface off with that brake clean, make sure we have a nice fresh surface and a nice clean surface for this sealant to mate to, and then we can go ahead and put our sealant. Again, a little bit of brake clean on a rag here, and we're just going to give this a really nice wipe down. Okie dokes. Now I'm going to do the same thing with that brake clean here. I'm going to wipe it on a rag, and I'm just going to wipe the back side of this seal, and then we're going to go ahead and apply the caulk. I'm going to go around all the holes and around this seal here, and we're going to plop it in. So full disclosure, I probably used way too much of this stuff, but I did try to take care not to get any of this in the bolt holes. That way we don't have any issues with blowing out the back of the inserts here. But I am just going to attempt to start these bolts here. Just that. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to run these down, and then we're going to line up our hose clamps that are back here and tighten them up. Okay, and now I'm just going to snug these up by hand. And I'm just going to grab a paper towel here and just kind of scoop this excess sealant off. Like so. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and get those hose clamps, tighten them up around that rubber sleeve, and then I'm going to slide my drive shaft back through. I'm just going to use a ratchet to snug these up, just easier than using a flathead. They're 8mm, so nice and easy. And I'm not going to kill them because they weren't particularly tight when I took it apart. I'm just going to snug them up. Okay. All right, now what I'm going to very quickly do, I'm going to apply some grease to the end of this drive shaft here to the splines, and we're going to slide it in. Okay guys, so I am just ever so lightly going to go over these ports here with this cookie. This is just it's basically this on a cookie. I'm just going to clean up the ports a little bit here. You don't want to gouge them. You have to be very careful when you do this. You have to know, you have to feel your tools when you're doing it. So I'm just very lightly just trying to clean them up a little bit. I'm not looking for perfection. We're just gonna do that for the rest of the ports. All right guys, so off camera, we just went ahead and did the same thing to the intake ports. We just cleaned them up, again, very lightly. You don't wanna gouge them. You just want enough just to get the corrosion off of the ports. And then we came over here and just did the same thing with the exhaust manifold. Again, you don't wanna, take any material off. You're just trying to get the corrosion off of the ports. So that's where we're at here, and now I'm at a point where I can get this engine back in the ski. So we're just gonna wheel this back over to the lift, use the lift to lift the engine up, and then drop it back in. Now when we removed it, I did dent this oil filter a little bit, so I do have a new oil filter for it. The oil is still clean because I only used the ski once or twice last season, and then it almost sank on me. You'll see the oil is still golden. So I'm not gonna be doing an oil change. We're gonna run it like this, but I am gonna throw a new filter on there. So let's get the engine back up, down into the ski. We could do most of what we need to do here. We can put our exhaust on, we can run all our hoses and most of our wiring. I just can't put the intake manifold in until I get the gasket for it. All right guys, we got our engine back in off camera. It's a little tricky getting it in, and it took me probably about 15 minutes of trial and error, so it's not really worth recording it. To get it in, you basically have to more or less kind of tilt the engine side to side. You got to tilt it to one side to get the motor mount brackets to clear, and then you rotate it back down. And then once you're in the ski, you have to tilt the front of the engine towards the front of the ski up and slide the coupler in. You might have to manipulate your drive shaft a little bit to get the coupler lined up, but that's what we went ahead and did. So the engine's in. I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to start reconnecting all the cooling hoses. I took pictures of all that stuff. I'll show you where everything goes once we get that all set up, and then we're going to go ahead and put our exhaust manifold in, and then it's just a waiting game for the intake manifold. I did, when I pulled the engine out, I showed you the oil filter. I did pull the oil filter off before we went to lower the engine in, and that just makes it easier so you can clear this a little better. You can see I kind of rubbed the front of the hull a little bit here with the timing cover bolts, but it is what it is. It's a very tight fit, and you'll see we got it in, the couplers lined up, and I'm gonna go ahead and start all of my motor mount bolts and begin tightening everything down, and like I said, hoses. All right guys, so off camera, we went ahead and tightened down our motor mount bolts. Everything's good there. I put our ignition coils back on. And over here, you'll see we have our exhaust manifold tightened up. Everything's hooked up, torqued them down to 18 foot-pounds. And under here, I ran all of our hoses. So the hose that's on the bottom of the water box here is going to come up and go to the port right under the intake manifold. The port that is on the top of the power takeoff wraps up and around and goes out towards probably looks like goes right to the exhaust, and then the hose on the bottom of the power takeoff goes out towards the back of the ski. So all the water hoses that we disconnected are now reconnected, and we did receive our gasket here from Kawi Performance for the intake. So we're just going to go ahead and throw the intake back in, tighten it down, and like I said, there's a new oil filter in there, and then we can finish running our harness and pull it outside, connect it to the hose, and check for leaks. So as you'll see, the floor is all wet. We had this halfway out the door running on the hose for about 10-15 minutes, and everything seems good. The only issue that I'm having is I'm getting a little bit more noise from the jet pump than I would like. So just to be safe, I am going to, off camera, this is going to be, you know, not a video, but I am going to pull the jet pump and just inspect the bearings, because they are paramount to how this machine runs. But you'll see here, if we just go ahead, it fires right up. I'm just getting a little bit more noise back there than I would like, so I just want to double check it. My wear ring was a little bit swollen when I rebuilt the pump, so the thing sat for a year without being used. I'm sure that you know, swelling might have increased a little bit, and you know, the impeller might just have to wear it down, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So tonight we'll pull that pump, inspect it. If everything's good, we'll be out on the water. So like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.